My name is Denise. I'm 31 years old, and for 3 years I was the secret landlord of the house my mother lived in for free. She didn't find that out until the Monday after she texted me that I wasn't real family enough to come home for Christmas dinner. The air in the grocery store parking lot was biting, the kind of New England cold that stings the nostrils and turns your breath into ghost puffs. I adjusted my grip on two overflowing bags of groceries, the plastic handles cutting deep into my palms. My shoulder-length blonde hair kept whipping across my face, sticking to my lip gloss, but I didn't have a free hand to tuck it back. I was Denise, the reliable one, the one who always remembered birthdays, the one who handled the insurance claims, and most importantly, the one who had spent the last 3 years keeping my mother's world from collapsing. I dumped the bags into the trunk of my SUV, the heavy thud of a 15-pound ham echoing in the quiet air. That ham cost me $60. The organic sweet potatoes, the artisanal rolls, and the 3 types of pie in the other bags cost another $100. I didn't mind. I'd been working 60-hour weeks at the property management firm I helped run, and if my success meant my mom and my brother, Trevor, could have a traditional Christmas, I was happy to provide it. I climbed into the driver's seat and blasted the heater. As I waited for my fingers to thaw, I looked at the wallpaper on my phone. A photo of the house I'd bought 3 years ago. It was a charming colonial with blue shutters. My mother, Linda, lived there. She thought of it as the family home. I thought of it as Asset 402. When Mom had nearly lost it to foreclosure after Trevor's business venture drained her savings, I was the one who stepped in. I bought the house outright, paid off the back taxes, and told her she could stay there for a measly $500 a month, just enough to cover the basic maintenance and insurance. I checked my messages, expecting a last-minute spices Mom had forgotten. Instead, a new text from her sat at the top of my screen. Denise, honey, I've been thinking. This year, Christmas is for real family only. Trevor is bringing his new girlfriend, Sarah, and her 2 kids. It's going to be a full house, and frankly, we need the guest room for them. Since you're so busy with your properties and don't have a real family of your own yet, it's probably better if you just stay at your apartment. We can do lunch sometime in January. Love, Mom. I stared at the screen. The heater was roaring now, blowing hot air onto my face, but I felt a sudden bone-deep chill. Real family. The words felt like a physical slap. I looked at the bags of groceries in my rearview mirror, the food I'd bought for a dinner I was no longer invited to for a house that I legally owned. I took a slow, shaky breath. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. For a second, I thought about calling her, crying, or reminding her that Trevor's new girlfriend was the 3rd one this year. But something in me finally snapped. The girl who always fixed it was gone. I typed 3 letters. Okay. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the space. I wasn't going to my mother's house. I was going to my office. The office building was a tomb. It was Saturday evening, 2 days before Christmas, and the lobby was decorated with a lonely, tinsel-draped tree that looked like it was losing a fight with gravity. My heels clicked rhythmically against the polished marble, a sharp, metallic sound that echoed up the elevator shaft. I didn't turn on the overhead lights when I reached my suite. Instead, I let the pale glow of the street lamps filter through the blinds, casting long, skeletal shadows across my desk. I sat there for a long time, the engine of my car still ticking in my head, the smell of that $60 ham still clinging to my coat. I pulled a heavy manila folder from the bottom drawer. It was labeled Asset 402, 114 Maplewood Drive. I opened it and began to spread the papers out like a deck of cards. There was the deed, stamped and sealed, with my name, Denise Miller, listed as the sole owner. There was the family support agreement I'd had my lawyer draft 3 years ago, At the time, I'd felt guilty for being so clinical with my own mother. I remembered how she'd cried, clutching a lace handkerchief, promising that she'd get back on her feet if I just saved her home. "You're my angel, Denise," she'd whispered. "What would I do without my real family?" I traced the word family on the document with my fingernail. It felt like a lie. I pulled up my bank records on the dual monitors. I scrolled through the rent income column for asset 402. July, $0.00. August, $0.00. September, $0.00. She hadn't paid a dime in 6 months. Every time I'd brought it up, she'd had an excuse. Trevor needed his car fixed. Trevor's heating bill was too high. Trevor was between opportunities. And because I was the reliable one, I'd swallowed my frustration. I'd told myself it was fine because I was doing it for family. But I wasn't family. I was just a guest room that needed to be cleared out for a girlfriend and her kids. A cold, hard clarity settled over me. It felt like the moment a fever finally breaks. I wasn't being a daughter anymore. I was a property manager with a non-performing asset and a tenant in gross violation of her lease. I picked up my desk phone and dialed a private number. It rang 3 times before a gravelly voice answered. "Denise, it's nearly Christmas. Don't tell me a pipe burst at the Heights complex." "No, Jim," I said, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. Jim was the most efficient process server in the county. He didn't care if it was Christmas or a hurricane. If you paid him, he delivered. "I need a favor. I have an eviction notice and a notice of intent to sell that need to be served first thing Monday morning." There was a pause on the other end. "Monday? That's the day after Christmas, Denise. Who's the tenant?" I looked at the photo on my desk, me and Mom at my graduation. I reached out and turned the frame face down. "A tenant who doesn't recognize the terms of her lease," I replied. "I'll email you the address and the digital files tonight. I want it handled by 9 a.m. "You got it. Check your inbox for the invoice." I hung up. My heart was thudding against my ribs, but for the first time in years, the weight on my shoulders felt lighter. I walked back to my car, the cold air no longer stinging, but feeling like a fresh start. The groceries in the trunk? I wouldn't let them go to waste. I drove to the local fire station, the one that ran the community food bank, and dropped off the ham, the pies, and the rolls. "Merry Christmas," the young firefighter said, looking surprised at the bounty. "Merry Christmas," I said with a smile that actually reached my eyes. "I'm having a spa day tomorrow. I won't be needing any of this." Christmas Eve felt different this year. Usually, I'd be elbow deep in flour at Mom's house, sweating over a hot stove, while Trevor sat on the sofa playing video games and Mom critiqued my pie crusts. Instead, I was wrapped in a plush white robe that smelled faintly of lavender and expensive laundry detergent. The spa was a sanctuary of hushed whispers and trickling water. I sat in the relaxation room, my shoulder-length blonde hair damp from a steam treatment, sipping cucumber-infused water. For the first time in a decade, my phone was on Do Not Disturb, but I could see the screen lighting up periodically on the side table. Mom, 3 missed calls. Trevor, 1 missed call. I didn't check them. I let the vibration hum against the wood, a distant reminder of a life I was opting out of. Christmas morning arrived with a thin dusting of snow outside my apartment window. I made myself a cup of high-end coffee, the kind I usually felt too guilty to buy, and watched the birds at the feeder. Around 10 a.m., I decided to peek at the messages. Mom, 8:45 a.m. Denise, the upstairs bathroom is leaking. It's dripping into the kitchen. Call me back immediately. We have guests. Mom, 9:15 a.m. Denise, did you hear me?
The furnace is making a clicking sound, and it's freezing in here. Trevor doesn't know how to reset it. Where are you? Trevor, 9:45 a.m. Hey sis, Mom's losing it. The house is cold and Sarah's kids are crying. Come over and fix the heater. Also, did you bring the ham? Mom says she can't find it in the fridge. I leaned back against my velvet sofa, a cold smile tugging at my lips. Usually, I'd be halfway to Maplewood Drive by now. Toolbox in the trunk, ready to play plumber, electrician, and caterer. I'd be the hero who saved Christmas, and in return, I'd get a lukewarm thanks and a seat at the end of the table. Not today. I typed a reply to the group chat. I'm not real family, remember? Guests don't fix furnaces. Have a Merry Christmas. I turned the phone off completely. I spent the rest of the day reading a book I'd wanted to finish for months. I ate a gourmet meal I'd ordered from a French bistro, duck confit, and a decadent chocolate tart. It was the quietest Christmas of my life, and easily the best. But as the sun began to set, casting long orange shadows across my living room, the fixer in me felt a twinge of anxiety. I knew what was coming tomorrow. Monday wasn't just another day at the office. Monday was the day the bill came due. I looked at my reflection in the darkened window. I looked rested. My skin was glowing from the facials, and my eyes looked sharper, clearer. I didn't look like a doormat anymore. I looked like a woman who owned the roof over their heads. I went to bed early, sleeping the deep, dreamless sleep of the truly decided. Tomorrow morning, Jim would be pulling into the driveway of 11-4 Maplewood Drive, and I wanted to be wide awake when the phone finally rang. Monday morning arrived with a sky the color of wet slate. I was at my desk by 7:30 a.m., wearing a crisp, charcoal gray blazer that made me feel like the professional I was. My blonde hair was pulled back into a tight, low ponytail. No loose strands, no distractions. I had a cup of black coffee in front of me, the steam rising in a steady, vertical line. I watched the digital clock on my computer monitor. 8:59, 8:59, 9. At exactly 9:02 a.m., my phone didn't just ring, it screamed. The caller ID showed a photo of my mom and me at a pumpkin patch years ago. I let it ring until the very last second before I picked up. I didn't say, "Hello, Mom." "This is Denise Miller," I said, my voice as flat as a frozen lake. "Denise, thank God." Mom's voice was high-pitched, vibrating with a mix of anger and confusion. "There's a man here, a horrible, rude man in a windbreaker. He just handed me a stack of papers and told me I was being served. He's standing in the driveway taking pictures of the house. Tell him to leave. Tell him this is a mistake." I took a slow sip of my coffee. It was perfectly bitter. "It's not a mistake, Linda." The silence on the other end was heavy. She only called me Denise when she wanted something, and I only called her Linda when I was finished giving it. "What did you just call me? And what do you mean it's not a mistake? These papers, they say eviction. They say notice of sale. Denise, I'm your mother. We had a wonderful Christmas, well, besides the heater breaking, and now you're doing this? Is this some kind of sick joke because I didn't have enough room for you at dinner?" "It's not a joke," I said, leaning back in my leather chair. The springs creaked softly. "It's business. You told me on Saturday that I wasn't real family. You made it very clear that my role in your life was optional. So I took your advice. I'm opting out of the family dynamic entirely." "You can't evict me," she shouted. I could hear Trevor in the background, his voice a muffled, indignant drone. "I've lived here for 30 years. "You lived here for 27 years, I corrected her. "Then the bank took it. I have owned this house for the last 3. For the last 6 months, you haven't paid the $500 we agreed upon. You've breached the family support agreement. According to the law, you are a holdover tenant, and according to the market, that house is worth $300,000 more than I paid for it. Denise, honey, listen to yourself. Her voice shifted, dropping into that manipulative, honey-sweet tone she used whenever Trevor's credit card got declined. You're just upset. We were cramped. Sarah's kids are small. We'll make it up to you. I'll make that pot roast you like on Sunday. Just call this man and tell him to tear up those papers. I can't do that, Linda. The real estate agent is coming by at noon to put the for sale sign in the yard. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. I'd suggest you and real family Trevor start looking for a 2-bedroom apartment, though with his credit score, you might want to look for a motel. You cold-hearted bitch, she shrieked. I'm a landlord, Linda. And then I did something I should have done years ago. I hung up. I sat there for a moment, my hand still resting on the receiver. My heart was racing, a jagged rhythm against my ribs, but I didn't feel guilty. I felt like I had finally stopped carrying a mountain that wasn't mine to move. Then the phone started ringing again, and again. Trevor started texting, "You're a monster. Mom is crying. Where are we supposed to go?" I didn't reply. I opened a new spreadsheet and started calculating the closing costs.
My phone didn't stop vibrating for the next 2 hours. It buzzed against the mahogany surface of my desk like a trapped insect. Trevor, Mom, even a distant aunt I hadn't spoken to in 3 years, everyone had an opinion now that the Bank of Denise was closed for business. I ignored them all. I had work to do. At 11:30 a.m., I pulled my SUV onto Maplewood Drive. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of suburban silence that follows a holiday. String lights still clung to the eaves of houses, and inflatable snowmen sagged on brown, slushy lawns. I saw my house at the end of the cul-de-sac. The blue shutters looked sharp against the white siding, but as I got closer, I noticed the signs of neglect I'd been paying people to fix for years. A gutter was hanging loose on the left side. A pile of trash bags from the Christmas party was overflowing on the porch, torn open by crows. A silver sedan was parked at the curb. Standing next to it was Marcus, a real estate agent I'd worked with on several commercial deals. He was holding a heavy wooden stake and a bright red "for sale" sign. "Right on time, Denise," Marcus said, checking his watch. He looked at the house, then back at me. "You sure about this? It's a beautiful property, but the current occupants look a little lively." As if on cue, the front door flew open. Trevor marched out onto the porch, wearing a stained hoodie and a pair of pajama pants. He looked like he hadn't slept or showered. "What do you think you're doing?" he yelled, his voice cracking as it traveled across the lawn. "Denise, tell this guy to get lost." I climbed out of my car, my boots crunching on the frozen driveway. I didn't look at Trevor. I looked at Marcus. "Put it right there, next to the mailbox. Make sure it's deep enough that the wind won't take it." "You're serious?" Trevor reached the edge of the lawn, his face flushed a blotchy red. "Mom is inside having a panic attack. She can't breathe, Denise. This is her home." I finally turned to him. Up close, Trevor looked even more like the golden child who had tarnished over time. He had Mom's eyes, but none of the work ethic she'd once possessed. "No, Trevor," I said, my voice low and steady. "This is my investment. Mom is a tenant, and you're a guest who overstayed his welcome 3 years ago." "We're family," he spat, stepping toward me. I didn't flinch.
I'd spent years managing angry contractors and difficult tenants. Trevor didn't scare me. You don't get to use the family card after you helped Mom write that text. I saw the group chat, Trevor. I saw the laughing emoji you sent after she told me to stay home. His face went pale, the bravado slipping for a fraction of a second. I'm selling the house. Marcus here is going to take photos of the interior this afternoon. If you or Mom interfere with him, I'll call the police. You have 30 days to get your things out. I'd start with the trash on the porch. At that moment, Mom appeared in the doorway. She looked smaller than I remembered, wrapped in a moth-eaten cardigan, her face streaked with mascara. She didn't scream this time. She just stared at the red sign Marcus was hammering into the dirt. Thump, thump, thump. The sound was final. It was the sound of a door closing that would never open again. The for sale sign stood like a red and white tombstone in the middle of the frozen lawn. Marcus, ever the professional, adjusted his tie and picked up his high-end camera. He looked at me, a silent question in his eyes. He'd seen a lot of messy divorces and estate sales, but a daughter evicting her mother on the day after Christmas was a first, even for him. "Ready, Denise?" he asked. "Ready," I said. I walked toward the porch, my heels echoing on the wooden stairs. Linda didn't move from the doorway. She stood there, clutching her cardigan to her chest, her eyes wide and red-rimmed. "You aren't coming in here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I won't let you." "Linda, let's not make this harder than it needs to be," I said. I pulled my key, the owner's key, from my pocket and held it up. "I don't need your permission to enter my property for an inspection. If you block the door, I'll have Marcus call the sheriff's department. Do you really want your neighbors to see you being escorted out in handcuffs while that sign is still fresh in the yard?" Her jaw tightened, but she stepped back. The house smelled like stale beer, burnt sugar, and the metallic tang of a failing furnace. It was a mess. Wrapping paper was strewn across the living room floor, and several empty wine bottles sat on the coffee table. In the kitchen, Sarah, Trevor's real family, was sitting at the table with her 2 young children. She looked horrified. The kids were picking at bowls of cold cereal, their coats zipped up to their chins because of the chill in the house. "Is it true?" Sarah asked, her voice small. "Are we being kicked out?" I looked at her. I didn't know this woman, but I felt a flicker of pity. She'd been sold a lie by Trevor, the lie that this house was a family stronghold where she could find stability. "The house is being sold, Sarah," I said gently. "I suggest you talk to Trevor about your next steps. He's known about the financial situation here for months." "You liar!" Trevor shouted, storming into the kitchen. "You never said you'd sell. You just bitched about the rent." "I sent you 3 emails in October, Trevor. I copied Mom on all of them. I told you that if the arrears weren't paid by December 1st, I would have to liquidate. You chose to ignore them. You chose to spend your money on a Christmas party instead of keeping a roof over your children's, or Sarah's children's, heads." Marcus began clicking photos of the living room. The flash of the camera was rhythmic and cold. Click, click, click. Every flash seemed to strip away another layer of the home they thought they had. Linda followed me into the kitchen, her desperation turning into a jagged, ugly anger. "You think you're so smart, don't you? With your suits and your big office, you're just like your father, cold, calculating. You've always been jealous of Trevor because I loved him more." The words should have hurt. A year ago, they would have leveled me. But standing there in my charcoal blazer, looking at the clutter and the dirt of the house I had subsidized, I just felt empty. If loving him means letting him become a 30-year-old man who can't pay a light bill, then you're right, Linda. I am different. I'm the one who paid for your heart medication. I'm the one who fixed the roof in 2022. I'm the one who bought that ham you couldn't find. I turned to Marcus. "Make sure you get shots of the water damage in the upstairs bathroom. We'll need to adjust the asking price for repairs." "Got it," Marcus said. I walked out of the kitchen, leaving them standing in the cold. As I reached the front door, I heard Sarah start to cry and Trevor start to swear. It was the soundtrack of a real family falling apart under the weight of their own choices. I didn't look back. I had a meeting with a contractor at 2 o'clock, and for once, it wasn't to fix something for free.
By the time New Year's Eve rolled around, the for sale sign on Maplewood Drive had a bright red under contract strip slapped across it. The market was hungry, and I had priced the house for a quick close. A young couple, a nurse and a teacher, had toured the place while Trevor and Mom were out. They didn't see the drama. They saw the potential in the blue shutters and the large backyard. They saw a home. To me, they represented the clean break I desperately needed. I spent the evening in my apartment, the floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city's distant fireworks. The silence was absolute. My phone sat on the coffee table, a black mirror that no longer dictated my mood. I had blocked Trevor and Mom on every platform, but like a recurring itch, they found ways to reach out. A notification popped up from an unknown number. I hesitated, then opened it. It was a photo of a handwritten letter, likely sent by one of Mom's neighbors. "Denise," it read in her shaky, dramatic script, "I am sitting on a packing box in a cold house. Trevor has gone to stay with Sarah's mother, but there's no room for me. I have nowhere to go tomorrow when the movers arrive. Is this really how you want to start your new year, knowing your mother is on the street? Please, just one last check to help me with a security deposit. After everything I gave you, don't I deserve that?" I looked at the words, "everything I gave you." I thought back to my childhood. She had given me a lot of things: the responsibility of balancing her checkbook when I was 12, the job of comforting her when her boyfriends left, and the permanent role of the strong one who didn't need anything. She hadn't given me a mother, she had given me a career in crisis management. I didn't reply to the text. Instead, I pulled up my banking app. I looked at the earnest money deposit from the buyers sitting in escrow. My profit from this sale was going to be significant, enough to finally take that sabbatical I'd been dreaming of since I was 25. I stood up and walked to the mirror. I ran a hand through my blonde hair, noticing how the tension that usually lived in my jaw had vanished. I looked younger. I looked like someone who had just shed a skin that was 3 sizes too small. The doorbell rang. I froze. My first instinct was that it was Trevor coming to make a scene. I checked the security camera on my phone. It wasn't Trevor. It was a delivery person holding a massive bouquet of white lilies and a bottle of expensive champagne. I opened the door, confused. "Denise Miller?" the man asked. "Yes. These are for you. No card, just a note on the receipt." I took the flowers, their scent thick and sweet, and found the small slip of paper tucked into the stems. It was from Marcus, the real estate agent. "To the toughest landlord I know. Closing is set for Jan 5. Enjoy the peace and quiet. You earned it." I set the flowers on my dining table. The lilies were beautiful, but they were also a reminder of what happens when you stop being a martyr. People start treating you with respect. They start seeing you as a person, not a resource. I popped the cork on the champagne, the sound a sharp celebratory crack in the quiet room. As the clock struck midnight and the sky erupted in flashes of gold and green, I raised my glass to the empty room. "To real family," I whispered, "the kind you choose." I took a sip. It was crisp, cold, and didn't taste like guilt at all. The morning of January 5th was bright and deceptively still. The sky was a hard, brilliant blue, and the sun glinted off the remaining patches of ice like scattered diamonds. I pulled up to 114 Maplewood Drive one last time. The house looked different without the for sale sign. It looked stripped, vulnerable.
A battered U-Haul trailer was hitched to the back of Trevor's dented sedan. The trash I'd mentioned weeks ago was finally gone, but the porch looked lonely, missing the rocking chairs Mom had insisted I buy her 2 summers ago. I stepped inside. The heat had been turned down to 55, and the air was thin and sharp. My footsteps rang out with a hollow, metallic echo in the empty living room. There were pale rectangles on the walls where photos used to hang, ghosts of a family history that had been built on a foundation of my quiet endurance. "You came to gloat, then?" I turned. Linda was standing in the kitchen doorway. She was wearing her heavy winter coat and holding a small cardboard box filled with cleaning supplies. She looked tired. For the first time, she looked her age. "I came for the keys, Linda," I said. "The new owners are meeting me at the lawyer's office in an hour. The house needs to be broom clean and vacant." "We're going," she snapped, though the fire was gone from her voice. "Trevor found a place, a basement apartment in the city. It's small and it's damp, and I'll have to share a bathroom with his latest investment partner. I hope you're happy, Denise. You've successfully broken this family apart." I looked around the empty room. This family was broken long ago. I was just the one holding the pieces together so you didn't have to see the cracks. I'm just not willing to cut my hands on the glass anymore. She walked toward me, her heels clicking on the hardwood, a sound I'd once associated with her coming to tuck me in, but now only sounded like a countdown. She stopped a few feet away and held out a heavy brass ring of keys. "I don't understand you," she whispered. "All this for one Christmas dinner?" "No," I said, taking the keys. They were cold, biting into my palm. "Not for the dinner. For the fact that you thought I was only family when I was useful. You didn't uninvite a daughter, you uninvited a servant, and a servant doesn't owe you a house." I didn't wait for her to respond. I walked out the front door and stood on the porch, watching as Trevor climbed into the driver's seat of his car. He didn't even look at me. He just stared straight ahead, his jaw tight, as Mom climbed into the passenger side. As they pulled away, the tires crunching over the salt and gravel, I felt a strange sensation. I expected to feel a pang of regret or a surge of triumph. Instead, I just felt light. I met the new owners, the nurse and the teacher, at the office. When I handed them the keys, the young woman's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you so much, Denise. We never thought we'd be able to afford a place like this. We're going to take such good care of it." "I know you will," I said, and I meant it. I walked out of the lawyer's office and into the crisp afternoon air. My car was packed, not with groceries for someone else's dinner, but with 2 suitcases and a passport. I had a flight to the Swiss Alps in 4 hours. I was going to spend 2 weeks in a place where no one knew my name, where the only reliable thing I had to be was myself. I climbed into my SUV and checked my phone one last time. I had a new message from an unknown number, probably Trevor or another guilt-tripping relative. I didn't open it. I didn't even read the preview. I simply swiped left and hit delete. I pulled out of the parking lot and headed toward the airport. The road ahead was clear, the sun was hitting the dashboard, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't going anywhere to fix a problem. I was just going.